How many folks grew up doing any kind of tobacco farming out there? Anybody ever do any tobacco farming? Any survivors? Anybody make it past the hardest work you'll ever do? I think every teenager should do a couple of summers in the tobacco field, a couple years in the military, and then they can have an opinion. Don't you think that'd be about the right way to do it?
Well, it's great to be in the Laugh All Night Green Room, and today's special guest is the one and only Rik Roberts from Nashville, Tennessee. Rik, how are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. So, have you been painting anything lately?
Oh man, I have been. I should have brought some stuff down to show you. I've been working on black and whites and then some rural country scenes.
Nice. Yeah, there was one that I saw on your social media you posted, and you were looking for some title ideas.
Oh
Did
yeah,
you land on a title?
yeah. I think somebody. So it was a black and white one of trees with the moonlight coming through the trees, and the best
Right.
the best one was Trees Company.
It's like the trees have their own little community going on.
Yeah, and you know what? The reason I do that is that I get close to the end of the painting, and then I really don't care what the title's going to be. But if I put it on there and say, "What would you name this?" people will
Right.
immediately start telling me what's wrong with the painting. So,
Oh,
like one guy goes, "Telephone poles full of antlers." So I'm okay. He must think my tree limbs look like antlers. So I looked at him like they kind of do like. So like you'll get 20 people saying mean things in a fun way, and then you can go back and fix those things if they really are things. You know, I had
right.
one where it said building sliding off a cliff, and I look and it was kind of tilted. So I'm like, all right, I can fix the foundation on that. But then sometimes people do give you funny idea names. Trees Company was definitely my favorite.
I wonder if the trees would have an HOA.
Yeah, probably an oak tree because it's gonna be there forever.
Right. Yeah. Do you have a lot of trees up there where you live?
We did. Now we have so much wind. We get tornadoes and wind a lot here in Nashville. So about 2 years ago, or early
Hmm.
last summer, I guess it was, we had these high winds. I can't remember what they call them, but they're something line, straight line winds. And we had these old sugar maples, and every time a storm would come through, it'd knock 4 or 5 huge, heavy branches, like 500-pound branches, down on one of our cars. So after it hit the
Oh
second
no.
car, we're like, we
Oh
have no
no.
shade now. We cut down all these trees. So we have beautiful trees here, but not in my yard anymore.
In a few months, Kentucky Fried Chicken is rolling out chickenless chicken. Have we lost our minds in this country? That's a real thing. I mean, if I bite into a wingding and it tastes like a green bean, we're going to fight, all right? Great.
One of the things you and I were doing on the road was you were traveling with a bike or renting a bike when you got to a destination. I always find this fascinating. We'll get to your comedy career in a minute, but you're one of the most ambitious bike cyclist guys I know. And can you kind of give a mileage update?
Yeah, so my goal starting in 2021 was to ride the distance around the world, which at the equator they estimate is 24,500 or so miles. So I just rounded up to 25,000 miles in case they're off.
Wow.
I'm at
Okay, so
23,750 something miles. So by July 4th, if not earlier, if I don't get injured or anything, I should be able to hit the around the world.
wow.
So you can do it
July
in 5
4th
years.
around the world.
Yep.
Wow. Have you had a favorite destination that you've taken the ride?
There's a lot of pretty places. Oregon was really pretty. That little greenway, like a sidewalk through the woods for 25 miles you can do. And that was kind of nice. I also just like, sometimes I'll get on the interstate and just see a road off to the side. I'm like, that doesn't look like anybody's on it. So I'll just pull over and start riding and see where it goes. So it's weird. Like it's fun to have hills and curves because you don't know what's coming next, but those are more taxing on your body. If you go to
Okay.
Indiana, they don't have either, so you can ride all day for like, with no effort, unless there's wind. Wind is your enemy half the
Oh
time.
my. So when does your enemy obstacles? Have you had a collide or a close encounter with an obstacle? Maybe
Um,
a
I've,
human
I've
or a car?
I've wrecked 3 or 4 times. One was coming off of a 4-lane road going down to a 2-lane road, and where the road and the off ramp meets,
Right.
um, there was about this big of a gap between the side of the road
Mm,
and the road, and the wind blew me over a little bit, and my tire went down that gap, and so then it
mm,
just went flipped right over. That was on the eighth mile of a 100-mile ride. So at the bottom of the ramp there was a Dollar General, so I went in there and got some rubbing alcohol and just poured it all over my wounds and just kept on going.
ugh,
But
ugh.
but yeah, I tell you, people make fun of people that wear helmets, and I definitely see why you want to wear it. But even on the most calm roads where there's nobody you'll ever run into, I've had tree branches 20 feet in front of me and 5 feet behind me fall down, just like whoosh.
No.
So
Ah,
yeah, wear the helmet.
crazy. Wow. Now,
But
do
it's
you
fun.
normally ride alone, or do you have a like a team that you ride with?
I'd say 99% of the rides I do by myself, just because it's just
Hmm.
easier. Like you never know. I signed up for group rides here in Nashville. There's a couple of different groups that I can ride with, and they're more leisurely, usually, sometimes longer, between 18 and 50
Okay.
miles. And that's fun if you're just in the mood to hang out and chat with some people. But everybody travels at a different speed, so either you're going a little slower than you want to, or a little faster than you want to.
Right.
But you can usually go further because of the way that the airfoil's off of riders. So when we get in what
Hmm.
they call a peloton, where one bike follows another bike, the first bike is doing 100% of the work. The second bike is doing 60% of the work
Oh
because
wow.
he's buffered the wind. And then the next bike back is about 55% all the way through. But even having one bike behind you helps you a little bit because it takes the drag off of the air that goes around you that usually pulls you back. It just goes on to somebody else. So sometimes we'll get out there and we'll get into that 10 or 12 deep peloton, and you sometimes don't even have to pedal for a while because they're just kind of literally pulling you along with you. So,
I am so ignorant because I failed homeschool, Rick.
well, you had a lot of
I,
a lot of competition.
I never knew that's what Peloton mean. You just
Yeah.
you just blew my brain. So that's fascinating. So be number two is kind of the goal. What rank do you want to be in the Peloton? Where would you want to position yourself?
You want to be all of it. So the first guy's only there for up to 2 to 3 minutes, and he goes back to the very back, and the next guy pulls up. Or if you do two lines, you have two leaders, and they give you a signal. They go a little bit faster than pull over. That way, everybody shares the load the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking
But
of
what's
sharing the load, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say the worst is when it's just you and one other dude, and the other dude is always riding your tire, and like you're always doing all the work. I'll start to slow down, and it's like, dude, it's your turn. You want to go up, I'll go side by side all
Right.
day long. But goodness, I'm the weak one out of the whole bunch. Why are you telling me the whole time?
I said, what kind of exercise do you think I should do? He looked right at me and said, why don't you ride a bike 3 or 4 times a week for an hour? I said, I'll tell you why not. I'm 51. It's not that I can't do it, but let's be honest. You see a man my age on a bicycle, you don't instantly think he's exercising, do you? Do you? You're like, that guy had a repo or a DUI, right? Right? And if you're not laughing, you rode here on a bike, and that's okay. We'll work through it.
I love your longevity in the comedy circuit, but also your tenacity to write. I'm on the road with a lot of different comics, as you know, with Laugh All Night, and I always appreciate that you bring a lot of new material and you're always working on things. But you've also had this weird, I'll even call it, quirky, generous passion to give away ideas to other comics to help them build their craft. What was the genesis to that for you to say, "Hey, I'm going to go help out some other people"?
As far as like teaching classes and things like that, when I really the thing that's triggered it all is I just moved to Nashville in '99, and the guy that ran the comedy club said, "Man, we have a lot of open micers here, and they never progress. They don't write. They're always dirty. They don't know how to put a joke together." He goes, "You're one of the
Mm,
best joke writers I know. Why don't you teach a class to these guys?" And I said, "You can't teach how to do comedy. It's just you either can figure it out or you can't." He goes, "Well, how did you figure out your jokes?" I'm like, "I don't know, trial and error." He goes, "Why don't you just watch a video of yourself He goes, and every time the crowd laughs, write down why they
Right.
laughed, and then teach people that. And
Huh.
I'm like, oh, interesting. And so I went back and watched, it was VHS tape back then, and paused it and wrote down why they laughed. And went, oh, that was a funnier word than normal, or that was a bigger surprise than normal, or I used an analogy there, or a comparison, or misdirection, all these different things. And I'm like, okay, I'll put that into like worksheets, and then I would pass them out to the class and have them write, 10 misdirections, or tell 10 jokes where you self-deprecate and make fun of yourself, those kinds of things. And then if they wrote 10, they usually had two, just like the same rate as a professional comic. If you write 10,
Yeah.
probably two are going to be worth what you think is good at your level. And so we'll take the best
Huh.
one of those two and start building your act from that. But, and the other part too was um, early on there, I had my first kid and I didn't want to be gone all the time. So it was another way to like
Mm.
earn a little bit of money and not have to go do a bunch of little gigs. I kind of erased all the little
Right.
gigs and just taught classes instead, which is better for everybody.
Mm. Was there a moment for you in the teaching side that some of the material kind of crystallized for what I would call like your voice? Because I know that a lot of comics struggle with that. There, I mean, point of view, but also when was it that you kind of felt like you found your voice?
I was thinking about this the other day, and this is probably true of I'll say 80% of comics. Just go with the 80-20 usual
Okay.
split. But I'd say finding your voice is probably 80% not being a different person than yourself, or not copying your comedy
Sure.
heroes, or the styles
Right.
of people that you like. And then once you get rid of all
Mhm.
that, what's left is you. And then 20% of the time, you
Right.
know who you are and you're different enough that you start with that and you're lucky and you go gangbusters. But I think it takes several years for you to take those training wheels off of other people's styles, whether you realize it or not. You have comics that you
Mhm.
like. You probably have copied one of their jokes almost word for word, not knowing it because it sounded like something you would say. But as soon as you get rid of all
Mm.
that, what's left is you. And that's kind of where I've gotten after 32 years or whatever. Any influence that I had from other comics is completely gone because I don't work with any comics hardly anymore. It's just me up
Mm.
there doing my thing, and then that's what it is. Does that make
I
sense?
was thinking it makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of like the authenticity, or like you're boiling off all the excess. It made actually. I was thinking about you last night, Rick, and I was watching a documentary about Gene Wilder.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Do when you look at somebody's lifespan, and some of the moments in his story are fascinating because he was in theater, but then was obviously a very surprising comedic style. Even when he was doing um, Wonka and the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What was the title of that movie? Gosh,
yeah. I think you Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I
Willy
think.
Wonka. Thank you. I missed the Willy. So apparently, when he was walking out to the gate, he took his cane and he got it stuck in one of the pavers, the cobblestones,
Hmm.
and then he left it there, kept walking, and then he rolled over and then stood up. And it was a moment of surprise. He actually created that idea in the film because that was his personality, and the word of unpredictability of sorts, which you've always had these like misdirections, and even with your comedy writing or even your comic songs that you've done. What was maybe when you think about misdirection in your writing style? Um, is there some kind of thought you filter it through? Because some people can use the word misdirection or surprise as a very common word, but what is the thinking or the filter process that you kind of put into your mind to find that?
Yeah, it's interesting. The really good misdirection jokes, I wouldn't say you completely stumble onto them, but they're hard to sit down and write. Like obviously, every joke should have a
Right,
surprise, but it's hard to sit down and go, I'm going to write 20 really great misdirection jokes today. Uh,
right, right.
in 32 years, I've had 16 probably great ones, the ones that last every single time. But looking at them, it's probably you skip a step. So you have a setup. Um, I've got a son who looks just like me. Then the premise, the other day, he said, hey, we kind of look like each other, don't we? And I say, yeah, what do you think about that? Then the punchline is him saying, what are you going to do? And
Right.
so what got skipped there was his reaction to please his father would be like,
Sure.
"Oh man, I think it's awesome," and he's just like being extra truthful. Oh man, I've there's no hope. So it's kind of the what would normally be a punchline and a surprise.
Right.
We jumped past that. I didn't write whatever that was. I just kind of in my mind skipped past that. I'm like, what's the worst thing he could say right now? So
Mm.
extremes is another good way to come about misdirection. Like go to the most extreme answer you would ever get and make that the punchline instead of trying to get four punchlines and a tagline to get there. Just be the most extreme right out the gate.
Right. Just jump off the cliff.
Yeah.
It'd be like the trees. It's kind of the idea of what's the extreme contrast to the trees. It's that
Yeah, it
they
would
ended
be
up
so
probably. Go
with the
ahead.
trees would be like which tree is in charge of the forest, and like the extreme
Right.
punchline would be the one that learned how to use a chainsaw.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's how he separated himself and literally
Exactly.
separated everybody else.
Grew up in Kentucky, moved to Nashville a while back, but just went back for a high school reunion. How many folks been to a high school reunion? Yeah. You don't really need to go anymore. That's the best part. You go once, you go, that's enough of it, right? People will just say anything. One girl I went to school with, hadn't seen her in forever. She goes, Rick, is that you? Have you had some work done? I'm like, well, first off, what part of me looks like it's been tweaked, all right? I need to take my receipt back if this is the after picture. But I'm not going to see her for another 20 years. I just played along. I'm like, oh, yeah, a few weeks ago, I got the Steve Buscemi eye transplant. And let me tell you what, it's taken really hold. And I got the old Nicolas Cage forehead expansion. That's looking pretty good. Get a lot of money back from taxes. Maybe the Betty White ankle tuck for bathing suit season. We'll see what happens. But I've looked a little older than I should because I'm trying to eat better, man. I've got high cholesterol, 425. Yes. That's the highest in my county, so I get to go to regionals in a couple of weekends.
You have definitely been one of these food guys on the road. I was talking to Sean Reynolds. We had an interview for the Laugh All Night Green Room, and he quoted you multiple times. And one of them was the discipline of food on the road. And um, you and I have traveled together, and I will contest that you are probably the healthiest of many. But tell me a little bit about some of your trade secrets when it comes to longevity on the road, and maybe some of your food disciplines.
Well, I mean, first I'd say my food disciplines are probably better when I'm with other people, so I don't always follow these. But for one, I try not to eat anything after 6 o'clock when I'm traveling.
Okay.
Uh, because showtime is probably 7 or 8, and I don't want to be eating right before I go up on stage. But I also don't want to get off the stage, hang out, and then it's 9:30 or 10, and everybody wants to go to Waffle
Right.
House, and you're like, I'm not going to eat a big meal at 10 o'clock. And then I won't sleep, and then I'll get this. It'll just start a big cycle of trying to catch up on rest. Um,
Sure.
and the other thing, I don't know that I really have too many food rules. I just try to eat healthy. Try to have at least one meal where it's salad. Um,
Hmm.
it's almost the beginning of my heavy bike riding season coming up. So in 2 or 3 days here, I'll go vegetarian from April all the way through October, just so
Oh
when
wow.
I exercise, there's more benefits. But yeah, I don't, what did Sean say? Am I missing? Should I be doing something that I forgot I was doing?
No, he was just mentioning that late at night you wouldn't typically eat, and you were really good about that because a lot of guys, or gals after the show, you go out and it's like you're decompressing on all the energy, right? And there's this like pent up whatever that is, the adrenaline rush. But then I call it like an adrenaline crash, right? And sometimes you cope with that by eating something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so you're pounding down waffles and syrup and sausage, and that doesn't help anything for the next day.
No, I would love to go out and have those. I used to have those big meals. In your 20s, you can. In 20s, you can eat 10 waffles and fall asleep on the 11th one, just like right into it.
Sure.
But now my stomach, I just know my stomach takes about 5 hours to digest a big meal. So if I eat at 8 o'clock, my stomach is just rumbling until 3, and then I fall asleep.
Yeah. I think you and I were somewhere once in before a show, like we had breakfast. And that's what it was. Sean and I were mentioning about breakfast food, and I was like, oh yeah, because Rik likes like we'll have pancakes before a show or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't mind having pancakes. Actually, one of my pseudo rules on the road is just to have a a fast food standard item. Like if there's nothing else around, like an
Okay,
Arby's turkey sandwich. It's an Arby's turkey sandwich. They serve billions of them a year. Probably going to be
right.
safe. Sometimes you show up like at a church potluck and you don't know if those crock pots have been cleaned in a decade. And they're trying to give you some kind of quesadilla soup. You're like, I don't know about the quesadilla soup 5 minutes before the show with the jalapenos. And they can be offended sometimes, the old ladies. They're like, oh, this has been in my family for a million years. But you're like, yeah, I don't want it in my stomach for a million years either afterwards. So having a standard little meal is sometimes a winner.
Like a go-to, yeah, yeah. When my wife and I are on the road together, strangely enough, she loves the kids meal at Chipotle.
Oh yeah, that's all you need actually.
Yeah,
Any more than that, you're overeating. The kids meal even has probably too many calories, but it's yeah, those are
right.
good. You get the little
I
chicken one.
remember now. Yeah, I remember now what Sean was touching on about you. Don't you love it when someone else is being interviewed and all they're talking about is you? So you had eaten something before a show, and I think it was one of those events where it was like a potluck kind of thing. But then you ate it and didn't realize you had an allergy
Oh yeah, yeah,
reaction, allergic reaction. Yeah, what was
yeah.
that?
So I was in Arizona and I was doing a show at a resort, and there literally wasn't any fast food places for 20 miles. I mean, we were out there in the middle of nowhere, and it was a lunchtime event. And they're like, "Hey, have lunch with us." I'm like, "No, I'll get something afterwards." They're like, "No, we've got a really good lunch," and so I have it, and it's chicken and rice, and there's some kind of I wouldn't call it gravy, but there was a glaze on the chicken, and it was made out of almonds, and I'm allergic to nuts, and they had just like not labeled it at all. And so I get there, and my throat starts to close immediately. As I'm eating it, I can't even swallow it, and I've got a
Ah,
90-minute keynote to deliver, and yeah,
ah,
that was that was bad. So that's when I instituted my no strange foods before a show. I'll bring a bag full of granola bars with me instead of eating a meal, and just have two or three if I need to. If it's
hmm.
running off schedule, instead of eating something I don't know what's in it.
My parents' first time ever on a computer was this Christmas. We kind of held off on getting it for them because we don't know how to be IT support for my parents on computers. But we got it hooked up, got them the internet service, me and my two brothers and everything, so they didn't have to worry about that. 2 days later, my dad calls me up on the phone. He's all excited. He said, Richard Dale, I'm about to fire off an email. Keep an eye out for it. I said, I will, sir. And just so you know, you don't have to call people right before you fire off an email. If you're going to text me later, how about a smoke signal? That'd be nice. Maybe two, it's windy. So I figure he's just first time on a computer, wants to make sure I got his first email, so I log in. There's an email, but it's not coming directly from my dad. It's asking me if I want to follow him on Twitter. This ain't good for nobody right here. I clicked the link to see if he actually set up a Twitter page. Oh yeah. In the 2 days he's had his first computer ever, he had not only got on there, got on Twitter, set it up, 165 tweets. Yes. However, all capital letters, no punctuation. It's just running on and on like the Unabomber's manifesto. It said, and 0 followers. Like he's just tweeting in the breeze. Let him rip, let him rip. So I start scrolling down there to see what he's all fired up about, and I realize it's not even 165 tweets. It's one tweet that took him 2 days to type all the way in there. Yes. It gets even worse. Whole story is about birds because my dad thought Twitter was a bird watching, updating website. That's my gene pool.
Do you still deal with some of those nerves before events? I know that you do keynote speaking as well with a very comical twist to it. You've done some amazing fundraising events for some great nonprofits, and then also your stand-up material. Obviously, you have dry bar specials and feature films and done some other cool things. But do you still get the nerves, Rik? I mean, you're 32 years into this.
Not really. Like I want every event to go good, and I'm excited to do it. So I have excitement,
Mhm.
But
Mm.
oddly enough, about a year ago, I started trying to figure out like, am I more nervous out there and I don't know it, or am I just not nervous anymore? So I started checking my heart
Right.
rate before a show, and during a show, and after a show, and it was less than 5 beats a minute difference. And
Really?
yeah, and sometimes during the show it would go down. Like I would be more comfortable and more relaxed. And if
Huh.
a physical bit, it would go up obviously and spike for a few minutes. But like the standing there talking to the audience was not any different than me talking to you right now,
Wow.
which may
Is
not
the
be good.
fit?
May not be good for the
Well,
audience, but it's great for me.
well, yeah. I was gonna say. I wonder if you're biking. You're cycling. The fitness side of you, because from an adrenaline standpoint and a heart rate standpoint, I mean, you're pounding it on the road. And
Yeah,
I don't mean just the comedic road, touring. It's the bike touring.
yeah. Well, yeah, you do learn a lot from the exercise. Like so, every when you exercise, you'll find that you have 4 or 5 heart zones, like an easy, like we're talking
Hmm.
right now, then a slightly increased, and then a
Hmm.
tempo zone or zone 3, and then zone 4 where you're not overdoing it, but you're at your maximum level. Then a zone 5 where you're peaking and you can't hold that for very long. And I'll do purposeful workouts. Like today, I'll go do hills. And hills, you're naturally
Okay.
going to have a higher heart rate because you're working harder. You're not going faster, but you're working harder. But I'll do a hill workout and keep my heart rate in the second zone without it going to a
Mm.
tempo or a fast zone. And I'll do that
Right.
just by breathing and taking my time, not worrying if I'm going to be the first person at the top of the hill. I'm gonna do the hard work at a lower threshold level. And that way, when you have an extreme change, your body already knows how to handle it because you've gone up these hills at a very easy heart rate before. So a high
Right.
heart rate's not gonna hurt. So you can kind of use that on stage. Like, and the other thing really is you're just more prepared. So early in your career, you might prepare to do a set all you can, but it's still brand new material and you don't know how it's going to go. But you're a newer comic, so you don't have the years of just preparation built into the performance. And so now at least I've got 30 years of knowing how to go out on stage and entertain a crowd. And I still get excited about my new jokes, and maybe my heart rate
Right.
only goes up during those. But I'm more prepared for if it doesn't go right. They're not going to walk out of the room if one joke doesn't work. You make
Sure.
a funny line about why it didn't work, and you keep on going.
Hmm. Do you monitor it with like a fitness watch or a smart watch, or what are you using?
Yeah, on when I'm on my bike, I have a chest strap that goes right on top of my heart, and then on stage, I just have my Apple Watch, and I'll just turn on
Okay.
the app there and record it.
Nice. Speaking of your heart, I like some of your material that relates to you and your wife. You have a few bits that you've done that I just, I don't know. I consider them some of my favorites. I'm sure other people have favorites of yours that are different. Comedy is kind of like a taste. But there's two of them I want to talk about today and kind of get your perspective or your point of view on how you found them and what happened. But you have a Valentine's Day joke about you and your wife going out,
Yeah,
and it was some assignment. There was an assignment that she gave you and her.
And it was right before Valentine's Day, this time last year. I said, well, here's something that's on my mind. I'm out of ideas of stuff to buy you for presents and surprise you with. 17 years, 4 or 5 presents a year. I said, I can't surprise you, but is there something you would like that I haven't got you? And she looked at me, she goes, oh, yeah. How about instead of exchanging gifts this year, we exchange ideas to each other on a piece of paper instead? I said, what kind of ideas? She said, I'm going to write down a couple things you're not doing right around the house you can do better. And you can write down a couple about, I'm like, stop right there. That's like a trap door on an escalator, I said, you want me to tell you something you're not doing right, and you're going to tell me something I'm not doing right, and that's a romantic Valentine's Day? She goes, well, if we fix those 6 or 7 things. I'm like, she's got a list started already. 6 or 7? I'm down 6-0, didn't know I was even playing the game. And here's how dumb I am. I go, well, if that's what you want to do, it sounds fine with me. Because I was thinking I don't have to go shopping or spend any money. It won't cost me nothing. Then I realized it could cost me the house. So we had 2 weeks. I knew she had 6 on me. I struggled to find anything she was doing wrong. Things you can do different? Sure. So that's what I made my list with. We go to Valentine's Day dinner, waiting for the food. Takes forever that night of the year. I shouldn't have gone, but 45 minutes goes by. I said, what am I not doing right? She goes, here's the big thing. If I ask you to fix something around the house, can you do it the same year I ask you to do it? I said, well, give me an example. She goes, I'll ask you to change a light bulb in the fixture. You will wait till every single light bulb in there burns out. Then you change them all in the dark. I said, that's why they got the extra light bulbs, duh. I did not say that, but I was thinking it real loud. I said, honey, I'll try harder. She goes, what about me? I said, I want to be crystal clear. You're not doing nothing wrong. I don't even think about things like that. But one thing I miss, before we had our kids 14 years ago, if I was home on the weekend, you make me this big old breakfast. I know it took a long time and you got your schedule and the kids, but man, I miss that big old breakfast. And I looked back across the table and she had started tearing up and crying right there at the Hardee's. On Valentine's Day, I'm like, hold it together. You're going to get a soggy thick burger here. I said, that's a compliment. You cook great. She goes, I didn't think you liked my breakfast cooking. That's why I quit. I'm like, honey, when you burn bacon, that's the best. It gets all crispy, and after the fire department leaves, we sit down and have a nice meal. You know, it works out fine. She goes, well, that's good that we talked it out. Now I know. And fellas, it works to communicate, because the very next morning I wake up, 6 a.m., I smell maple syrup and pancakes, and I run downstairs, and my wife had bought a candle somewhere that smells exactly. You ever been hungry and mad at 6 a.m.? I bet it's a Yankee candle too, you know? Southern candle let you sleep in about noon. What? I hit the bottom step. I'm like, what are you doing with that candle? It's like, oh, I had to use it. The last light bulb just burned out.
One thing I'll do once I have a joke that works and it's a minute or two long, what I do is I try to break it. And so, like in the middle of this joke, I was going to break off and go a different direction. And almost if you go
Sure.
back to the wood analogy with trees, like if you're splitting logs, you put this little it's a wedge, and you hit it, and then that gives you a place for the axe to go or for the wood to
Yeah, yeah.
split. And so if your act is your big tree trunk, you got to hit that wedge in there. And then I try to put a new joke in there to spread things out a
Hmm.
little bit further. And then if that works, I'll try to split that and add something in the middle, knowing that I'm safe on the beginning and the end of the story. It works already. I'll just see where else can I go with this. So that's when I
Mm,
started adding, like, the list of 6 or 7 things we're not doing right or wrong. And then
that's
where could we
cool.
have this discussion at? Instead of home, that's boring. But if it's Valentine's Day, and we're at dinner, then that's romantic. But then if it's at Hardee's, it's not. So I just kept trying to find things to make it lots of surprises along the way in the story.
I don't know. It's all part of getting older. Got to make healthier choices. I got to because I got younger kids. I'm 51. I got a 14-year-old son and a 7-year-old baby girl. I know. Thanks for the proper response. You're just like, oh, oh. And if that's not enough, recently my wife has started talking about adoption. I'm like, honey, I know my heart's in the same place as yours. But I don't think anybody is going to take these kids off our hands at this point.
So you and some other comics, you've obviously taught this through your School of Laughs, which I've had more comedians show gratitude and appreciation to your generosity and mentoring. And I know that that's probably, even in this joke writing that you're reflecting on with this story about you and your wife, it's got to be fulfilling to see somebody kind of not only come up with the ideas, but then go out on the road and do something with it. What's that been like for you? Because, I mean, you've had enough time that you've seen people show up with no idea, no experience. I mean, just totally, green banana.
Yeah.
What's it
It's
been
been
like for
pretty
you to see
cool.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I taught classes from like 2002 to 2020, so 18 years.
Okay.
And so it's like having kids. They're baby comedians, they're open micers. They do the graduation show. It's the first time they've ever been on stage in front of an audience. And
Right.
the classes were pretty thorough. Like, I wouldn't hold somebody back from doing the graduation show if they weren't ready, but I made sure that they were ready. And so most
Sure.
people got up there, did their 3 minutes, and either did really good or some of them just destroyed. Like, they would start
Yeah.
surprising themselves at how they were able to do it. And then, you know, a handful stick with it for another couple of weeks, and then a smaller handful stick with it for a few months, and then a
Right.
year later you might see one or two still out there. But over 18 years, that's 30 or 40 people, that are still doing it. And so yeah,
Wow.
it's cool to see, um, and it's fun knowing that they had it in them the whole time. They just needed somebody to help them get it out. And I'm glad not everybody takes a comedy class, because we don't need 60 million comedians out there, but we can
Right.
always, there's always room for one more, and especially for another good one. And so it's good when you see them out there doing their thing. And then when they take that big step, and most of them gave me a phone call like 5, 6 years down the road, like, I think I'm going to go full time now. What do you think?
Wow.
And I'm like, here's all the things you need to think about, but you have to make the decision. And
Mm.
so that was like a kid leaving home, like going off to college, or leaving college and going off to do a career. To me, it's like, oh, they did all the work, but I helped them with getting into the school of thought to get them there or whatever.
Sure.
And then really the most, I mean, rewarding part of it is seeing them make become friends with the other ones that have taken my classes over the years,
Hmm.
and they're holding writing meetings and meetups, and they're trying to help each other still. Like, that's one of my favorite things.
Tell me a little bit about that. I'll call it the banter back and forth, or some of the synergy, because it's there is a lot of original thought. One of my favorite comedians, Stephen Wright, has this statement: "Stop writing, start noticing."
Hmm.
And a lot of his observational stuff, then goes into a very abstract point of view. But obviously, once you have that idea, you still want someone in a way to, kind of like sit on the couch and bounce it off of them. I mean, there's been
Hmm.
several comics who have told stories of, when they're doing writing, they just want somebody in the room to just, okay, hey, I'm going to toss this out there. What's the reaction? Because that's kind of what you're looking for. But
Yeah.
um, so for the guys and gals that have gone through it, what recommendation do you give to people when it comes to that? Seeking the feedback, seeking that community, or maybe the one or two people you bounce it off of.
Yeah. You have to find the right people, and not everybody's going to be right. They could be great comics, and they could do this great with other people, but you might not fit into their groove. So
Mm.
don't just ask one group, and if they turn you down, or they're too busy, or they don't have room for
Mm.
one more person, just give up, because it may not have been the right group for you anyway. Um,
Right.
but but the hard thing with bouncing ideas off, I mean, obviously there's probably four good ways to do it. The best way is be on a gig with somebody. Like, when we do a gig together, we got a 2 hour drive to somewhere in Texas. We can bounce ideas off the whole way there and back, and we don't have to have an answer right there. We're still in the car for 4 more hours total. So
Right.
on the way back home, we may have thought of something. So I always like that, because you're kind of getting your creative juices flowing before the show. And if,
Mm.
if you if you both really laugh at something, then you might even try it that night at the show, just because it's so fresh. So to me, that's ideal, because it's taking time that would have been wasted if you're just driving somewhere by yourself, and made productive.
Right.
Which efficiency is one of my I wouldn't call it a pet peeve, but man, when time is used inefficiently, it drives me nuts, because I'm getting older. There's not as much time, and there's things I want to do, and there's things I don't want to do, and I want to have time not to do them. If that makes any
Right.
sense,
Right.
I want to have,
Sure. Totally.
mid 50s. I want to live life and not just grind it out all the time. But if I'm on the way to a job doing comedy, I want to use that wisely. So that's one way. If you're not riding the car with somebody, there's two or three comics that call me out of the blue all the time, and I know they're driving, because that's the only time they call, and they've got 5 hours because they're driving from Indianapolis to Iowa, and that's always fun, because we catch up for a little bit. And if I'm in the car,
Right.
then we're both making good use of that driving time. And so
Okay.
that's my second most favorite way to do it. Third and I'll meet up with a couple comics here in Nashville at Panera or something like that, and we'll have a meal, and then we'll plan an extra hour to stick around and run some ideas by each other. And so that's another favorite way because I'm getting to eat some food and have some coffee, and coffee's a stimulus, so your brain's kind of kicking in a good gear. And then the fifth is a Zoom group with some people, and that's my least favorite. It still can be productive, but it's the least
Mm,
productive of all of them.
right. Yeah,
You
there's
know,
definitely that movement in the car, is fun. And then obviously if you're just maximizing time, optimizing that dead time on the ride somewhere, makes sense. Makes
yeah. And the
total
good thing
sense.
about the car too is hopefully you're not looking at your notebooks or reading things out. You're just kind of what's on top of your mind, what's something you've been working on. So you're saying it the way that you remember it now. And as long as you can remember what the feedback is you got from the other comic, or you could hear them and your
Yeah.
cell phones weren't scrambled a little bit, then you can add that to it when you get there. But it's being more present. When you bring a notebook somewhere, you're not exactly present. You're reading something you wrote down
Right.
whenever, 2 weeks ago, 3 months ago. But if you're on a phone call in the car, you have to be pretty present. You're trying not to kill yourself,
Sure.
another person, and write a joke. so, so that's my
Yeah.
favorite. And there's
Speaking of,
there's comics that I will always say, "Hey, I'm going to be in the car for 8 hours today. If you want to call, that'd be great."
right.
One night while we're brushing our teeth, he's looking in the mirror at him, then he looks over at me, then back at him, and back at me, and just real weird. I'm like, "What's the matter, bud?" He says, "Nothing the matter, but I just noticed me and you were starting to look alike." I said, "Well, yeah. What do you think about that?" He goes, "What are you gonna do?"
Before we go today, I kind of want to just ask you a question of what you're most excited about these days. I know that you've had such a long ride in a lot of regards, but also you're still passionate about comedy writing and speaking and all that you do. And what's happening in your world you're excited about that you'd want to share?
As far as keynoting, I have these different keynotes I do for groups, and I've got three plus a workshop if they want to actually put some stuff into use right there. But a couple groups this year, within a week's time, asked me if I would put together a communication series for them. And so
Great.
they're like, we've had you 3 times. We've had all your speeches. They like them. Those groups, not every group resonates 100%, but these two particular groups were like, yeah, they went over so well. They're just asking, does he have anything new to come this time?
Right.
And so I've put together and I'm working on one called Communicating with Clarity. Every word matters. And it's really fun. It uses a lot of comedy examples because everything in comedy that gets a laugh is usually miscommunication. It's or a different anticipation of what was going to be communicated. So all my material is up for grabs to put into the keynote as examples, which is fun. But also it's helping me
Yeah.
learn, when to use certain approaches in communication to get the best results.
Mm,
Not for manipulation, but for information and insight. So I'm trying to put that together in a comedic way, and it's the first one's going to be a 90-minute version of it, so it's kind of a big chunk to
that's
work
great.
on. But I've got a war room on the other side of this wall where I've got all my notes and everything strewn across the table, and I'm slowly pulling it all together to try to make a flow out of it. So I'm excited about that. I'm always excited about the stuff we do with new missions, and I was going to give you an update. My passport should be back in the mail within 2 to 3 weeks. I'd actually
Awesome.
taken 2 weeks off in March, to one for spring break for my kids, and the other I was hoping to go with one of your other buddies who's down there right now, um,
Hmm.
so we could pair up. But it didn't work out time wise. But I'm excited about that and to continue everything that you guys have started, because all the videos I see and all the people who get excited at their comedy shows to
Right.
sponsor some kids and get them through, and the fact that the kids that were there many years ago are now teachers and pastors within the organization just proves that it works. So super excited about that, and really can't wait to get my passport and go down there to the Dominican and meet some of these kids face to face and see everything that's going on down there.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be exciting. No, I'm thrilled for you about the passport, obviously, and a future trip to see what's happening. And always love having you at the Laugh All Nights as we bring comedy to families and churches, and but also for your keynote stuff. I love the creative process. The fact that you have a war room and you're building out material and the creative process isn't you wake up from a nap and there's the finished product. I respect that about you. You know how to kind of go to the gym and do the dead weight lifting.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my loose system. It may not be the fastest or whatever, but in the end, it should pay off. But the interesting thing about when you start to put together a keynote like that is, you've had this information over years, so you've got some of it in you, but you also want new information and up to date information and statistics and results that back up what you're doing, and so your
Okay.
antenna goes up. So everywhere you're going, communication is front and center, and so
Mm,
you're taking notes in public, just like a comedian would say, "Hey, I'm writing a joke about this right now," and your antenna's up. Anytime you hear something about that, it's going in, and so my antenna is up around communication, which is the most important thing we have probably on the planet as
right.
far as getting the word out. And so it's hopefully going to make me a better communicator. And I've already started changing some of my ways I speak with people based on stuff I've learned, which is great.
That's great. And probably our wives could give us some pointers, right?
Yeah, they sure could. As my wife says, sometimes I think you want me to be able to read your mind. I'm like, oh no, I do not want you to be able to read my mind.
Yeah,
You'd have slashed my
exactly.
tires yesterday.
And not just the bike tires.
Right, right.
Awesome, Rick. Well, this has been a delight. Thanks again, not only for your friendship and just encouragement along the journey of doing Laugh All Nights and being at the shows and having a blast. I can't wait. We have some tours coming up together. I think we're going to be trying to get you to ride bicycle through some of the New England states.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna figure a way to
Check
make that
out.
work.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Awesome. Well, any final thoughts you want to share today relating to anything?
Um, no, I was going to try to come up with some really wise saying, but it would just be repeating something from somebody else that was wise, probably. No, have fun. Uh, yeah, just have fun with comedy. Come out and see a show. If you're watching this, maybe you've seen a show already, but support other comics that are in your area that are doing comedy the way that you like them to do it, and just give them some encouragement in any way that you can, because it is a lonely road out there for comics. So any feedback they get that's positive is really good, and any that's negative stays with them forever. So
Yeah.
I'd rather you have an honest, quick opinion that they'll forget than one you didn't think about creating that they'll never forget.
Mm. Well, that was wisdom and that was well said. Amen on get out there and support the art of comedy. Show up, enjoy, laugh, and make sure you think about what you're going to say to them before you say it.
Yeah, here's the worst thing
Goodness
that's been said to
gracious.
me after a comedy show, and it was said
Okay.
probably 22 years ago, maybe 25. I'm standing I was at a comedy club as me and two other comics, and I was the opening act. I'm standing there, the headliner selling T-shirts, and the feature act is selling DVD or CDs probably back then, and I'm just hanging out, trying to soak a little bit of love from the audience, because back
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
needed that. And so they tell the headliner, "Oh man, we've been following you for 10 years. I can't believe we finally got to see you. This is awesome." Then they get to the feature act. "Hey, I'd never heard of you, man. You did great. I'm going to try to keep it. I'm going to keep up with you." Then the guy gets to me and he goes, "Nice effort." And his intent was great, but I still remember it. Like, he knew I tried, but he implied that I
Yeah.
was not funny at all. Like, so
Uh,
so think about what you're going to say. Uh,
yeah.
it's funny to me now, but back then I was like, "Daggone, nice effort." I would rather him not say anything or just ignored me, but there
Sure.
it goes.
Well, you're bringing some great laughter, Rick. Appreciate you tremendously, and thanks for hanging out in the Laugh All Night green room. And can't wait to see you on the road soon.
All right, buddy. I'll see you. It will be pretty soon, so I'll see you right around the
Yeah, it
corner.
will be. Can't wait.
All right, see you.
Thanks.